The train heaved its last breath as it came to a halt at the Edgewater station, smoke bleeding into the pale winter sky. Snow cracked beneath boots and hooves. Somewhere in the blinding white, the station bell clanged twice, slow and hard, like a warning rather than a welcome. Rosalie Morrow stepped off the train with gloved hands clutched around a Bible and a photograph that had been folded and unfolded so many times the man's face was nothing but a blur in her memory. His name was Jeremiah Crane, 41 years old, farmer, widower, one son, a practical man he'd said in his letters, not cruel, not prone to drink, and he had room for a woman in his life. He'd enclosed money for the train. That alone had set him apart from the others. She wore blue calico and a bonnet trimmed with graying lace. Her eyes, the washed-out color of sea glass, skimmed the crowd. She was not afraid, just tired. Years of scraping meals from church cellars and living under other people's ceilings had hardened her against surprise. She was 28, but already bore the kind of silence that made men speak carefully in her presence. Someone whistled. A boy ran past her with a crate of chickens, feathers blowing free like snowflakes. Another man swore at the cold and kicked a frozen patch of mud, and then there he was, a man with a badge. Not the badge of a sheriff, not the tin star of a deputy, a federal marshal. He held a paper, creased and yellow, not a bouquet or ring. His coat was black, his eyes blacker. His hat shadowed a face that looked like it had forgotten softness a long time ago. "Rosalie Morrow?" he asked. She didn't answer, not right away. "My name's Marshal Bram Edison," he said. "I need you to come with me." "I'm expected," she said, holding up the letter like a shield. "I've got a man here, Jeremiah Crane." The name passed through the air like a cold wind. "I know," Bram said. "That's who the warrant for." He didn't offer her his arm, didn't offer a seat, just nodded to the edge of the platform, where a saddled gelding stood tied alongside a smaller mule. The mule had 2 blankets and a pack already strapped, as if she'd been expected. "I'm not involved in anything," she said. "I know that too," he said, "but if you want to live, you'll come now." The station began to empty. She didn't know where Jeremiah Crane lived, didn't know his son's name, didn't even know what town she'd come to, not really, just a black smudge on the map, halfway between justice and nowhere. She went. They rode for half a day before the world even began to look like it had form again. The wind was a living thing, pressing in from the prairie, gnawing at her skirt. When they stopped at a hunter's shack to water the animals, she spoke. "Why is there a warrant?" Bram didn't look at her. He pulled a flask from his coat, drank, then offered it. She refused. "Murder," he said. "Who?" He glanced at her then. "Which answer scares you more, that I don't know, or that I do?" She didn't respond. Later, when they made camp beneath a slant of pines, she boiled snow for coffee and asked again. "Is he dead?" Bram was sharpening a knife by the fire, his whetstone slow and steady. The scraping sound filled the dark like breath. "Dead men don't sign letters. So he's alive. For now." She thought of the letters, the careful way he wrote about his son, the talk of soil and harvest, the ache of loneliness just beneath the lines. Was it all a lie? "I was only coming to be a wife," she said. "Wrong county for that," Bram said. The next day brought frostbite to her fingers and silence to their mouths. They crossed frozen creeks and left behind no tracks. By the time they reached the foothills, her Bible was wet from the snow that soaked through her bag. The ink on the letter had bled. His name was gone. That night, around another fire, she asked the thing she hadn't dared yet. "Why bring me? If he's dangerous, why bring a woman?" Bram stood slowly, brushing snow from his coat. "Because he asked for you," he said, "and because when he finds out I've got you, he'll come." He moved to the edge of the camp, staring into the dark. I've hunted crane across 4 states, could never get close enough. But men like him always show for the things they think they own. Rosalie looked down at her hands. She wasn't a woman owned anymore. But maybe she had been. The fire crackled, an owl called from the trees. Something inside her, something old and buried, shifted like ice breaking. Then let him come, she said. By the 3rd day, they stopped avoiding roads. Rosalie no longer asked questions. The cold had settled into her joints and her tongue felt thick behind her teeth, but her mind stayed sharp. She noticed how Bram's hand stayed close to his sidearm even when he was drinking or pissing. How his eyes scanned the ridgelines like he expected to see something worse than snow. He never spoke of Crane again. She didn't press him. But she thought of the man with the soft handwriting, the careful way he'd asked her age and wait like it mattered. That man no longer existed, if he ever had. The town of Elmstown was 3 buildings wide and 2 buildings high, surrounded by black trees and hills choked with shale. They arrived near dusk. The general store was shuttered. The church bell hung sideways in its tower, the rope cut and coiled like a snake on the ground. People watched from windows but didn't come out. Bram dismounted and tied off both animals in front of a weather-beaten inn. Rosalie followed him inside. The air stank of kerosene and meat gone wrong. A woman behind the counter looked up, her face like split parchment. "Marshal," she said. Bram nodded. "Got a quiet room?" he asked. "You planning to make it quieter?" she said, voice dry as pine bark. "No," Bram said. "She just needs sleep." The woman's eyes flicked to Rosalie. She didn't ask questions, just handed over a key and pointed down the hall. Bram let Rosalie enter first. The room was narrow, with a cot that groaned under the weight of its own rot. A water basin and cracked mirror were the only comforts. The window faced the woods. Bram handed her a piece of jerky wrapped in paper. "Eat, rest." She didn't touch the food. "When does he come?" Bram closed the door without answering. She didn't sleep. At dawn, something happened. The sound of hooves fast, many unshod, echoed through the streets. Rosalie stood at the window watching the edge of the tree line. Then she saw it, a figure on a horse, not one of the town's gaunt nags. This one gleamed black, legs like smoke. The man on its back wore no coat despite the cold. His face was shadowed, but his posture was familiar. He rode past the inn, slow and deliberate. She felt it in her ribs before her mind caught up. Jeremiah. But he didn't come in. Instead, a second horse appeared from the trees, riderless and foaming, and then shouting. A body fell in the snow outside the church. A boy, maybe 16, neck twisted wrong. Bram was already moving. She met him at the stairs. "He's here," she said. "I know," he said. "He's making a point." Rosalie stepped into the doorway and looked out over the street. Jeremiah Crane was standing beside his horse now, head turned toward the inn, as if waiting for someone to step into the crosshairs of his memory. Bram touched her arm. "Stay in the room, lock the door." "No," she said. His eyes narrowed. "I'm not asking. I didn't come this far to be locked away again. You came to marry a murderer. I came to bury what was behind me." They stared at each other. Somewhere between them, a plan began to form. One she wasn't sure he'd share, and one she wouldn't fully understand until later. By nightfall, the town was locked down. Nobody moved between buildings. The church was silent. The sheriff's office, long abandoned, was used to board up windows instead. Bram sat at the table in her room, cleaning his rifle. "He won't come in daylight again," he said. "He wants to watch, make us sweat." "You've known him long." "Years." "Was it your wife?" she asked. Bram paused. "No," he said. It was my brother. What happened? He got caught, tried to arrest Crane for cattle rustling. Crane gutted him in front of his sons, said it was justice. Then he disappeared. And you've chased him since? No, I buried my brother, took care of the boys. Then I found out Crane was building something, a group, men like him, cutthroats who want land but don't want law. They use mail-order letters to find women who won't be missed, marry them, use them, bury them. Rosalie felt a chill colder than any winter. So I was bait. You were a pattern, Bram said. He picked you because you looked like the last one. Blonde, alone, a woman who wouldn't scream loud enough for anyone to care. She stood slowly. Her spine ached, but her eyes didn't. And you used me too. He didn't deny it. I don't plan to die for either of you, she said. Good, Bram said. Then we'll give him what he wants. That night, Rosalie stood alone in the chapel. Bram waited in the shadows above, rifle cocked. A lantern burned beside her, casting long fingers of light through the broken windows. Her bonnet was gone, her hair braided back. In her hands, she held the letter, dried, warped, and her Bible. She didn't pray. When Jeremiah entered, it was through the vestry door. He looked older, colder. His beard was longer than the photo, his eyes just as sharp. They cut through her like wire. You're not what I expected, he said. Neither are you, she replied. He stepped closer. Didn't think you'd be fool enough to stay in town. I'm not afraid of you. He smiled, not yet. His hand reached toward her face. She didn't flinch. Up above, Bram shifted. A boot scraped wood. Jeremiah turned. The shot came fast. The lantern shattered. Rosalie dropped to the floor, arms over her head. By the time she stood again, Bram was on the ground, bleeding from his shoulder. Jeremiah was gone. The window above the altar had been smashed out. He'd escaped again. Rosalie helped Bram to his feet, blood soaking through her dress. This ends now, she said. No, Bram hissed. It ends when he thinks he's won. She nodded. She understood. She would be the thing he wanted most. And the thing that finally killed him. They left Elmstown before dawn, Bram tied tight in the saddle, bleeding into his coat. Rosalie rode behind, steering the mule with gloved hands sticky from dressing his wound. She packed what little the innkeeper offered, salted pork, hard bread, 1 jug of whiskey, and a warning. He's not chasing, Bram muttered once, half delirious. He's leading. They followed anyway. The tracks led north into a stretch of land called Devil's Ribbon, where the snow thinned and gave way to bone-colored dust. Wind carved the stone into spires and coyotes called it dusk. For 3 days they moved without speaking. On the 4th, Bram passed out and nearly slid from his horse. She caught him by the coat collar, dragged him down, and built a fire in the hollow of a canyon wall. That night she watched over him. She pressed snow into his fevered mouth. She recited psalms not for comfort but rhythm, something to keep time, something to keep her tethered. When he woke, he whispered, "You don't flinch easy." She said nothing, just handed him the whiskey. Later, he told her what he hadn't before. Crane had a place in the hills, not a cabin, more a fortress carved from the rock itself. He kept men there, not many, but enough. They rotated women through it, always the same type. Always women with no kin, no paper trail, no husband who'd file complaint. How many? She asked. 7 we know of, he said. Might be more. She stared into the fire, thought of her own name still fresh in the county registry, no next of kin, no children, no church that would ask, no grave waiting with her name already etched. Bram caught her look. You're not one of them. No, she said, I'm what comes after. The canyon narrowed into a gulch where vultures circled and bones turned pale under the sun. She knew they were close when the birds disappeared. Not even the scavengers dared to follow past a certain point. Rosalie stripped her calico for trousers, cut her hair with Bram's knife, wore his coat. She stuffed the letter into her boot, carried only a knife, and rode ahead while Bram took cover beneath a boulder ridge. "If you don't come back," he asked, "you shoot anything that walks my shape." He didn't smile. When she crested the final slope, she saw it, Crane's hold cut into the cliffside like a scar. There were no walls, no gates, just rock, shacks, and steel. Smoke rose from a forge. A woman in a gray dress shoveled ash. Another hauled water with shaking arms. A third lay beside the stable post, unmoving, face half covered in snow. Rosalie dismounted slow. Let them see her. Let the memory in her face hit like a ghost returning. Crane was not the first to greet her. A man with a broken nose stepped out, rifle slung across his back, eyes narrowed. Behind him came another, younger, with a club strapped to his belt. "You got a name?" the first one asked. "Rosalie Morrow," she said. "Jeremiah Crane sent for me." They traded glances. The younger one whistled low. "God damn," he said. "Didn't think he'd do it again." "She's late," the older one muttered. "He'll want to see her," the young one said. They led her past the other women. No one spoke. But one, a dark-haired girl no older than 16, met Rosalie's eyes with a look not of hope but challenge, like she'd seen others try this before, and fail. They brought her to a hollow in the cliff. A fire burned against the rock. Crane stood in front of it, bareheaded, coat open, pistol at his side. He stared at her. "I saw you die," he said. "No," she replied. "You saw me turn away." He stepped forward, boots grinding against the gravel. "You came back for me. I came to finish what you started." He laughed, deep, full, like something cracked open in his ribs. "Thought you run. Women like you always run." "I never ran," she said. "I waited." He moved in closer. "I don't believe in fate," he said, "but I believe in second chances." He reached for her waist. She let him. He pulled her close, hands sliding down. That was when she moved. Knife sharp and low, into the side of his leg up through the femoral artery, not a scream but a breath. That was all he gave. Then she twisted it. He collapsed. The guards outside didn't hear, not right away. She pulled the pistol from his hip, walked outside. The first guard looked up, laughed. Then she shot him in the eye. The second tried to run. She put a bullet through his thigh and left him howling. Then she turned to the women. "Get up," she said. "You're leaving." One woman fell to her knees. The girl with dark hair didn't. She grabbed a rake and stabbed it into the wounded guard's throat. Rosalie handed her the pistol. "You ever used one of these?" "Now I have," the girl said. They gathered supplies fast. The forge yielded a rifle. The stables gave them 3 horses. Bram was waiting at the ridge, rifle braced against a rock. When he saw her, he stood, stunned. "Where Crane?" he asked. "Behind me," she said, "bleeding out like he bled your brother." He looked at the women. "How many?" "4 now," Rosalie said. "The rest are ghosts." They didn't look back. The canyon closed behind them. That night they camped in the valley. Bram set the fire. The girl, her name was Leela, stood watch. The others huddled beneath blankets, silent and wide-eyed. Rosalie sat beside Bram. Her hands still trembled. "She took the shot," she said. He nodded. She'll take more, he said. Rosalie looked at the stars, cold and endless, like something watching. I think I know what comes next, she said. What's that? They'll come for him, for what he left behind. Then we'll be waiting, Bram said. No, she said, we'll be hunting. The sun rose on ash and hoofprints. By the time Rosalie and Bram reached Gethrin's Pass with the other women, word had already begun to spread. A man like Crane didn't die quiet, and he didn't die alone. There were others, scattered across the territory, who had followed him not just out of fear, but faith. Men who believed the law had become weak, and that women were best used and buried. They called themselves the Covenant. It wasn't a gang, it was a creed. In the town of Marrow Ridge, 3 days west, a postmaster was found nailed to the front of his office, tongue cut out. He'd carried the letters Crane used to lure women. In Pike Crossing, a deputy vanished. Days later, they found his body chained to the church bell, his boots filled with oil and set aflame. Someone was sending a message. Crane may have died, but his name was a match struck in dry grass. Rosalie didn't flinch when the news came. She'd already gathered what she needed. Names from the letters Crane had written, maps Bram helped draw from memory. Testimony from the rescued girls, each one sharp and cold now, hardened by survival. Leela was the first to offer her voice. She'd been taken from her stepfather's ranch in Toombs County, promised a marriage, promised land, woke up with bruises and a collar chain. Watched 2 other girls hung from the rafters when they tried to flee. I don't want to hide, she told Rosalie. I want to see them bleed. So they made a list. 23 names, men with aliases, false farms, hollow churches. Men who traded women like livestock and left no grave markers behind. Rosalie didn't carry a Bible anymore. She carried a ledger, one name at a time, written in her own hand. The first was a man called Preacher Holt. He ran a river church 2 days south of Briar Hollow. No congregation, just a pulpit and a well. Locals spoke of girls who came and never left. Bram didn't wait for warrants anymore. He wired the nearest circuit judge to claim jurisdiction, then rode with Rosalie, Leila, and 2 of the other rescued women. They reached the chapel just before dusk. Holt stood outside, humming and splitting wood. He didn't recognize Rosalie. That saved her the hesitation. He reached for his axe. She shot him through the hip. He crawled inside, screaming about salvation. They followed. Inside the chapel, the walls were covered in scripture, all handwritten, names beneath verses, some female, some not. Rosalie lit a lantern. The back room held blankets and ropes, a ledger matching hers, except his held sketches. Faces of girls. They left him alive long enough to name the others. Then Leila slit his throat. She didn't look away. By the time the 5th name was crossed off the list, the snow had melted and the prairie turned to rot and heat. The Covenant scattered, but not far. They hadn't expected anyone to follow, especially not a woman. By the 7th, Rosalie had a bounty on her head. $300, dead or alive. She wore it like a crown. Some towns wouldn't give them shelter, others gave them supplies. Quiet women came out from behind curtains to hand over names, maps, letters of their own, lost sisters, vanished daughters. The list grew faster than it shrank. They found bodies in dry wells and old mines, chained to fence posts, folded in burlap. Rosalie dug when she had to. Bram stood silent, shotgun braced against his knee, sweat soaking his collar. He didn't question the rage anymore. He fed it. They stopped shaving graves. They started burning the men who filled them. One night they took shelter in a burned-out stage depot north of Caller's Ford. Leela sat by the fire loading shells. One of the other women, Tamsin, braided her hair. Rosalie sat apart, ledger on her knees. The pages were stained with soot, names blotted out in thick ink. Bram walked over, sat beside her. "Two more left," he said. She nodded. "Then what?" She didn't answer. "Then what?" he asked again, slower. "We find the rest. This list ends." "Theirs doesn't," she said. He stared at her. "You're not the same woman I met at the station." "I was never her," she said. "She just hadn't sharpened yet." She closed the ledger. Crane built something. It wasn't just men, it was belief. That women were things to be promised and taken, that our silence was guaranteed, that the law would only come if there was property stolen. She turned to him. Now they know better. At dawn, gunfire woke them. 3 riders, one with a bounty flyer tucked under his vest. They didn't ask questions, just opened fire. Tamsin took a bullet to the ribs, went down screaming. Leela shot one through the throat. Bram got the second. The third tried to flee. Rosalie ran him down on foot, tackled him from his horse, beat him until her hands split open. He begged for his life. She asked him who sent him. He said a name she hadn't heard before. A woman's name. That night, Tamsin died. She was buried beneath a bluff with only her first name carved into a rock. No last, no date, just the name and a braid of horsehair tied around it. Layla didn't speak. She just loaded her revolver with one hand and kept the other clenched. Rosalie looked at Bram. "We were wrong," she said. He nodded. "How many more?" "She's not one of them," Rosalie said. "She's worse." "What makes you think she's part of it?" "She's not following them," Rosalie said. "They're following her." They followed whispers through the Badlands, places where the law didn't go and the wind didn't speak. Every trader they passed, every saloon they entered, Rosalie asked for the same thing, Madrigal, no last name, just the one. The name the dying bounty hunter had choked out, eyes gone wide like he'd seen the devil herself. Some said she was a widow, others swore she was a preacher's daughter gone black inside. One man in Larkspur Junction claimed to have seen her set fire to a church with women still chained in the choir loft. Not in rage, but in ritual. She walked away while it burned. The Covenant had followed her like wolves. Rosalie saw it now. Crane was never the head. He was just the bait, offering a quiet, predictable brutality. Madrigal was something else. She didn't break women. She remade them. The last name in Rosalie's ledger was crossed out on a rain-warped night in Galt's Crossing. Bram had shot the bastard through both knees before Leela lit his barn and everything in it. Rosalie had sat on a fence post, watching smoke pull into the sky like a prayer, and whispered, "She's waiting for us." It took 2 weeks to find the trail. A courier, half-starved and riding a borrowed horse, gave them the first real clue. Said there was a settlement west of the Iron Range. No roads, no maps, just men and women who didn't speak unless you bled them first. They rode into the hills, 3 of them now. Leela wore a duster too big for her frame. She'd taken it off the last man she'd killed. Her hair was shorter, face drawn like old stone. She didn't ask questions anymore. Bram had gone quiet. No sermons, no warnings. Just watched the path like a man walking toward judgment. Rosalie led. The mountains rose like teeth, pines bent inward. The snow here hadn't melted, not even in spring. They found the first body on the 5th day, a woman hung from an iron tree, no rope, just wire, no name. The second was worse. A child no older than 8 laid out on a blanket, dressed in Sunday best, eyes sewn shut. They didn't speak of it. But Leela climbed down, gathered the girl into her arms, and buried her beneath a stone cross made from twigs and a bit of her belt. "Not another one," she said. Rosalie kissed her forehead. "No more girls," she thought, "not while I live." They reached the edge of Madrigal's land by twilight. There was no wall, no guards. Just a single house made of black timber, low and wide, surrounded by silence. Rosalie dismounted. "She's inside," Bram said. "She's been waiting." "Then we don't make her wait longer." They stepped through the front door without knocking. Inside it was warm. Lamps burned, the smell of lavender hung thick, books lined the walls, a fire crackled. It was not what Rosalie expected. It was worse, comfort disguised as something earned. At the hearth, Madrigal stood. Not tall, not old. Her dress was plain, her hands folded. "You took your time," she said. Her voice was like velvet drawn across a blade. "Been busy," Rosalie replied. "I know, I saw your work, messy but effective." Rosalie didn't blink. "You sent them," she said. Madrigal tilted her head. "No, I showed them how. They chose you." "They chose wrong." "No, they chose exactly right. You burned the rot. You did what no man could." Leela stepped forward. "You killed girls." Madrigal's eyes moved to her. "I freed them from lies, from silence. What they became afterward, that was truth." "You let men use them," Bram spat. "I let men reveal themselves, and when they did, they bled, just as they should." Rosalie pulled the revolver from her belt. "I'm not here to debate it." Madrigal smiled. "I know you're here to kill me." Rosalie raised the gun. Madrigal stepped forward. "You kill me, you bury the fire. But if you leave me, I'll give you names. Not men, women, the ones who stayed, the ones who still serve." Leela shook her head. "She's lying." "She's always lying," Rosalie said. "Then what are you waiting for?" Madrigal asked. "Do it. Put me down like a rabid dog. That's what you've become, isn't it?" Rosalie stared at her. "You think I care about your words?" Madrigal's smile faltered. Then Rosalie shot her in the leg. Madrigal screamed, dropped to her knees. "Words are cheap," Rosalie said. She walked over, pressed the barrel to her forehead. "But pain, that tells the truth." Bram didn't stop her. Leela turned her face away. The shot was clean. They burned the house down by midnight. The heat of it turned the snow to steam. They stood together, watching the flames eat the wood, the books, the careful lies. No graves this time. No markers. Just ash. In the weeks that followed, they went back to the towns, quietly, found the women whose names Madrigal had kept, freed them. Some ran, some stayed. The ledger was gone. Rosalie didn't knight it anymore. She had a new name. Not widow, not bride, not survivor. Something older, something harder. A warning. When they passed through Edgewater Station again, a girl stepped off a train holding a folded letter and a Bible. Her face pale, her eyes darting. Rosalie walked to her. "Who you looking for?" she asked. The girl hesitated. A man said he was a farmer, promised marriage. Rosalie took her by the hand. "Not today." And they left the platform behind.